On our Wednesday episode of Locked On Raptors, with the Raptors taking on the New York Knicks tonight, we take the opportunity to catch up with old friends as we chat with Gavin Schall of Locked On Knicks about Immanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, OG Anunoby, and what to expect tonight.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Wednesday, January the 8th, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 11 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on Blue Sky. The show is on Instagram. You can also join us in the Locked On Raptors Discord server, link in the description of the podcast. Free to do. It's much appreciated when you go ahead and do that. You become part of our listener family. You get to ask mailbag questions for the newsletter and the podcast. It's a great thing. Speaking of the newsletter, you can go subscribe to the newsletter. You can go to the QR code on the screen if you're watching on YouTube, or you can go to the link also in the description and sign on up. We are over 1,100 subs on the newsletter. It's very cool. I'm having a great time writing it. I wrote yesterday about the Raptors defense having no good ideas and lots of other things going on in there. I'll have a little mailbag post coming up later on today for you to check out. So please go subscribe. It's 100% free. You get Katie Heindel 4 days a week. You get Josh Lloyd fantasy tips and so much more. Please go rock with the newsletter. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. And let's get to it. On today's show, I'm joined by Gavin Schall from Locked On Knicks for a little crossover action. Haven't done a ton of these because, look, no one cares to talk about the Raptors around the league. But the Raptors and Knicks kind of have this intertwined fate with the trade they made just over a year ago. We had Gavin on to talk about the Quickley and RJ progress and, things that happened in New York that maybe could pretend things that happened in Toronto. We also talk about OG Anunoby and his recent slump and whether that's anything to be concerned about for Knicks fans. We also take a look at tonight's game, which, look, the Knicks are much better than the Toronto Raptors, but they also are a team that kind of has some matchup flaws that the Raptors can take advantage of. Maybe, just maybe, this is one where the Raptors can get themselves right. We talk about all that coming up on today's show ahead of tonight's game. And without further ado, let's get to it. Myself, Gavin Schall, talking Raptors, Knicks, and old pals.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome into the Locked On Knicks, Locked On Raptors crossover review. Joining on the Locked On Knicks side of things, this is Sean Woodley, as promised, the fantastic host of Locked On Raptors podcast. If you're coming from Toronto or anywhere else and you're a big Raptors fan, I'm Gavin Schall of the Locked On Knicks podcast. Sean, excited to get to talk to you for the second intro today because I messed up the first one.
You don't got to tell people that. Don't say the quiet part loud.
Sorry. This is the first time. I'm good at my job. Anyway. I'm super excited to get to talk to you, man. We went over it the first time around, but a little bit of a tough time for the Raptors, a little bit of a tough time for a Knicks. So a good time, I thought, for a little bit of nostalgia to look back on some old friends.
Yeah, 100%. I think the degree to which it's been tough times for both of these teams, a little different in scale, I'd say. The Raptors have won exactly one basketball game since last these two teams played on December the 9th. I think the Knicks have won more basketball games than that. I know both of these teams just lost to the Skeleton Magic, so we have that in common. But yeah, it's been a rough go for the Raptors of late. Hopefully now that Immanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett are back, both back in the lineup in the last week after missing some time, Quickley missing basically the whole season outside of 2.5 games. Hopefully we can kind of get some actual tape on this Raptors team, and I'm hoping that the sort of atrophy of losing a bazillion games hasn't sapped the spirit or will to, play real, reasonable, sensible basketball for this team. Fingers crossed. And the Knicks are a team that I think the Raptors usually play pretty well. I know they didn't have such a good time the week of Boxing Week. I guess they have played since then a couple times now. They just keep on playing the damn Knicks. But yeah, it's been a rough go since that first matchup back in December. And hopefully this can be a start of turning things around. Not saying this is going to be a get well game for the Raptors, but it sure would be nice if it were.
Yeah, and I think it's totally possible because I know you preempted me. The Knicks, it's not relatively, I'll say, because compared to where the Knicks have been, it is a very good time and everything is gravy. In the context of how good they are right now, it's a rough time in the midst of their first 3-game losing streak of the season. And to your point, I think Toronto, if Scotty Barnes had not gotten hurt, probably wins that first game between the two teams. And it's sort of another like weirdly disappointing game for the Knicks against the team that they probably should beat. But a big part of that effort the first time around was, of course, RJ Barrett having just a fantastic game. And in my 6 years or so of doing this, I would describe him as kind of the ultimate Rorschach test. And there's no player that's excited me and befuddled me more. And on any given night, if I wanted to see a multi-time like apex bully ball all-star wing, you could get that, and you could talk yourself into, like, there were 7-8 game stretches where I'm like, all right, I'm done. I promise I'm this is my confessional, my basketball confessional. I'm done complaining about RJ Barrett. He's a star. He's awesome. Nailed the pick. Congratulations, Knicks. And then other nights you just see an inefficient chucker who doesn't play defense and or meaningfully contribute to winning. And I would swear off him for good and say, all right, I'm never buying it again when he has 10 good games in a row. But it feels like he has settled in Toronto a little bit to being quite a good offensive player, despite, because of the injuries to Barnes and Quickley, not a lot of help around him. 23.5 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists this year. So, Sean, I ask you, after a year, can you answer the question I couldn't answer in 5 years? What is RJ Barrett?
RJ Barrett is a really good offensive player who might not be around on teams that want to win because his defense is just that bad. I think I have very few questions or doubts about the offense at this point. He's been doing it for more than a calendar year, and essentially he's a very good offensive player in any context where he's not the number one. And I think he's beautifully figured out how to not be the number one. His efficiency really struggled this year during the time where Scotty Barnes missed early on in the year. It was a real slog for him. Teams were just totally selling out on him. They knew he was going left and trying to finish. And so they'd send 2 or 3 guys to his left hand, and he would have a lot of trouble finishing. But outside of that, he's had a lot of success filling in the gaps as like a second or third option, playing off of Scotty, now playing off of Immanuel Quickley. And I just think, the way he finishes, the way he, has just become this sort of streamlined player. There's no fluff to his game. It's just like gets the ball, gets downhill, scores. And, he's added this little sort of pick and roll game to his mix this year, where he's got like this really nice pick and roll craft. He's got good chemistry with Jakob Poeltl working the 2-man game. That's been a big step up. His passing has really improved. He's a damn good offensive player. Defense is what gives you a lot of pause. And I think one of the biggest questions facing the Raptors over the next little while here, as they look to sort of evaluate their team now that they're finally fully healthy, is where is RJ Barrett and where does he fit into all of this going into the long term, right? He's still got a couple more years on his deal, but time goes fast in the NBA. And I think they're going to have to come to some sort of decision in the next 18 months or so on, is RJ Barrett a guy for this team for the long haul, or is he someone that maybe becomes sort of the big salary in an upgrade trade where it's like RJ plus the extra picks they have and some prospects to go and try to get a real difference maker. I lean probably towards it being that right now because the defense is such a struggle, but I can't quit that second season of his, Gavin. Looking over his time with the Knicks, I mean, always had pretty negative on-off impact numbers for defense during his time with New York. Last year before the trade, it was like, or the year before the trade, sorry, it was like truly awful, where they were like 7.5 points better on defense when he sat versus when he was on. That's like the low point of his impact defensively. But his second season, a mild positive on defense, like just right there, like a kind of an average defender. If he can be an average defender, I think there's something here with him in the Raptors long term. And I have to ask you, 2020, 2021, what the hell was happening there? Why was it passable? Why was it average? What was he doing that he's not doing now? Because right now, watching RJ Barrett play defense drives me as crazy as watching him play offense makes me excited. Like he gets back cut like it's his job, like he loves to do it. I don't know, like he just kind of, the rotations that he makes are pretty baffling sometimes. It's just a rough go with him. And on ball, he's no great shakes either. Like, what has good RJ Barrett defense looked like in the past? Because I ain't seen it, but I'd love to see it because I like rooting for RJ Barrett.
Yeah, that season was, it was just magical for the Knicks in general. Obviously, COVID year, a lot of just tough time in general for everyone. And that team was sort of a shining beacon. Julius Randle, the basketball gods blessed him, and he became a 40% three-point shooter for a year. So you might want to look at that year as an anomaly and throw it away. But I would always reference that season on our podcast and say, there was this one game against the Clippers where he was just going back and forth with Kawhi Leonard and was guarding him on the other end of the floor. And Kawhi was getting his, but like he was just challenging him every moment and leveraging his strength. And like physically, there aren't a lot of questions about RJ defensively. Like, does he have elite feet? No. Like, but is he solid enough one-on-one? Yeah, he's fine, and he's so strong. Like, he can't get bullied. Like, when he's locked in, he is, I would say, a slightly above average defensive player. And I think it was sort of a mentality thing on that team that they had just such little aggregate talent. Like, it was the starting line. It was him, Reggie Bullock, Elfrid Payton, Mitchell Robinson when Mitch wasn't healthy. It was Nerlens Noel. That there was just kind of a foxhole mentality on that team. And I think everyone defended so hard, it just would have really stood out if he didn't. And that's where I'm curious to maybe, like, RJ is so talented, but also needs such a specific fit. And to your point, sometimes can only be the best thing that he is, which is a number one, number two type option on a team that just does not have a lot of tertiary talent. But I wonder how he'd fit into a team with like a really good defensive identity. Like, if you just plugged him in for Jalen Williams in Oklahoma City right now, would he look good on that end of the floor? Would he defend hard? Like would he be good as a second option off of Shea? Obviously would not be what Jalen Williams is, but could he do like some kind of an impression of that? I don't know. Like, that might be overstating things, because Jalen Williams is an all NBA caliber defender. You can see I'm tying myself in knots trying to talk about RJ Barrett defensively, which emphasizes what I was talking about, that he's a very confusing player. My point is, in the right context, I think he can defend. We've just seen so much more bad than good in his career that it's hard to bet on that at this point.
Yeah, and it's tough with the Raptors because he's playing next to Grady Dick on the wings, who's not a good defensive player and may become an average defender at some point. He's a smart guy, but like, he's not physically capable of staying in front of guys right now. And it's just like blow by city between him and RJ. And yeah, like, the strength thing with RJ is baffling to me because he is so clearly just like a bowling ball of a man. When he's driving downhill, dudes just bounce off of him. They have no hope of staying in front of him. But I think it's his like lateral quickness that leaves you a lot to be desired. And like, when he's trying to shuffle his feet, that's where he's maybe not quite as strong as when he's going north-south. And he just a little bit slow. He gets the corner turned on him a little too much. And then, yeah, like I mentioned before, like the inattentiveness off the ball, it's like a genuine concern. Like, it's so bad at times that it just seems like he's out there almost getting back cut for sport just to see like how many times he can get. Like, it's almost like he's in a bet. Like, it's just like, yeah, I'm going to give up 30 back cuts tonight and it's going to be a record. And I'm going to like, it's just, it's tough to see. But yeah, the offensive stuff with him, no doubt, he's an awesome offensive player right now. And I think fits really nicely with Scotty Barnes. And the hope is that with Scotty kind of taking his own defensive leap this year, maybe that can shelter Barrett a little bit. Maybe it's not Grady Dick who's the long-term starting two guard on the team. Maybe he's more of a reserve and an Ochai Agbaji steps in, or Jacoby Walter, who's looked pretty interesting as a defensive player so far as a rookie. Maybe that's the longer-term vision here, and it kind of helps insulate Barrett. But as a defensive wing, and with Barnes being more of a sort of roamer type that kind of puts out fires, I don't know if you want Barnes to like carry all the big wing assignments. It'd be really great if RJ could take those. It's just not something he's been capable of to really any degree so far in his time in Toronto, which is a shame because the offensive stuff has been so good and such a revelation.
Yeah, I've been impressed, and especially I think with the shooting consistency from him, is that's another thing that's been so up and down. But next on Locked On Knicks and Locked On Raptors, I want to really quickly hit on Immanuel Quickley, because even though he's no longer Knick, might still be my single favorite player in the NBA. Sean, I know you feel similarly about OG Anunoby, so we're going to talk about both next on Locked On Knicks and Locked On Raptors.
Today's show is brought to you by a new little game I want to tell you about. You can play it on your phone. It is Ultimate College Basketball HC. If you've ever dreamed of being a college basketball head coach, this is your chance to step into those shoes in Ultimate College Basketball HC. You control every detail of your program, from recruiting players and hiring coaches to overseeing training camps, handling NIL deals, and managing scholarships. It's all in your hands. And when it comes to game time, you get to drop offensive plays and set your strategy. The way you play won't just affect the current season. It'll shape your future and the years to come in your school's basketball program. It's a game that lets you feel the full weight of what it means to be a head coach and lead your team to glory. Look, the Raptors aren't so good right now. Maybe you can live vicariously through your college basketball team. Maybe you can scout some future fake hypothetical prospects for the Raptors to draft. Either way, there's a special offer right now for Locked On NBA listeners. Use promo code LOCKEDONCBB, all caps, inside the game store, and get a free boost for your program. It's the perfect way to kickstart your coaching career. To download Ultimate College Basketball HC, just visit ultimate-cbb.com or look it up on the app stores. Ultimate College Basketball HC. Begin your coaching legacy today.
All right, back on Locked On Raptors and Locked On Knicks. Immanuel Quickley, tragically, I know it hurts you more than it hurts me as someone who watches him every night. But I also enjoy watching Immanuel Quickley and just root for the guy relentlessly. Want him to be healthy. I'm very happy to say he's for Knicks fans who don't know, he's back from injury. His first 2 games back, a combined 26 assists. He has not shot the ball well the last 2 games. Really struggled against the Bucks, obviously. But that number just is so startling to me because the same way, like there were all these debates about what RJ was, there were all these debates about what Immanuel Quickley was, and specifically like can he be a true point guard? Like if the Knicks were to move off, I'm trying to, it was Elfrid Payton his rookie year, but like before they got Jalen Brunson, there was all this discourse of like, all right, can Quickley be the long term answer at point guard? And then even then, like could you play him like substantial minutes at point guard? And it seems pretty clear, like the most essential duty of a point guard, just moving the basketball, creating easy shots for others. He's gotten pretty darn good at it. I know, Sean, that started in a much larger sample size last year, but what have you seen in terms of his playmaking? And how do you anticipate him making things easier for the rest of the Raptors now that he's back on both ends of the floor? Because maybe it was because RJ was so bad as a starter, but defensively, the Knicks would always have these wild swings. And they'd go from like the 23rd best defense to the best defense in the league whenever Immanuel Quickley played.
Yeah, I mean, defense has been a struggle so far. I do think he's got more to offer there. And we're working on like a 3-game sample here. For those who don't know, he got hurt in the first game of the season, like 14 minutes in after looking pretty good. Comes back, plays 2 games, looks awesome in one of them and looks okay in the other, and then gets hurt again and misses like 22 games. And so he's played 6 games all season. Really 3 if you're talking about him with Scotty Barnes and sort of the mostly full complement of players. And yeah, the defense has been rough. He's been getting kind of caught up in screens, and he's not been great in screen navigation. He's getting, falling behind the play a little bit, getting blown by. I think he's got more to offer as like a team defender. And I do think as a point of attack guy, there's no reason a guy that elusive can't be good as like a fight over screen type dude. He's pretty long. Like I think there's more to offer here, and that's something he's going to have to improve over the course of the life of this contract to really make it worth it for the Raptors. But on offense, I really like Immanuel Quickley as a pure point guard type. I know he's sort of branded as this like microwave scorer. And it's like, oh, well, he's going to be like a combo guard. He's going to score a bunch of points and then kind of work a little bit with the ball in his hands. I feel way more at ease when he's just is kind of running the Raptors offense. The Raptors were a team for most of this season that were like comically bad with turnovers, just like kicking it away. They had 31 turnovers in a game against the Hawks a couple games ago. Like awful stuff. Immanuel Quickley comes back and he ends up, I think the Raptors have like 10 turnovers and 11 turnovers in his first 2 games. Like there's that sort of like ball security that he brings to the table on top of what I think is some pretty creative passing. I think he's getting like deeper position on his drives than he typically does. Like he's getting paint touches, spraying out, kind of creating advantages with his drives. It didn't really translate well in their last game against Milwaukee. He had just 3 assists, but the 2 games prior, the 15 against the Nets and the 11 against the Magic, these aren't like cheap assists. These are like a guy finding, really great outlet looks in transition, finding Scotty Barnes and deep seals with great entry passes. And man, has been hard to find good entry passes among Raptors guards this season. Really creative pick and roll reads and finding the roll man, stuff like that. I think like to me, he is more pure point guard than he is scoring guard, honestly. And I would be very at ease if he was just kind of running the show for the Raptors, freeing up Scotty Barnes to be more of like a power forward, power wing type, sort of in a similar vein to like how Jalen Johnson works with Trae Young in Atlanta, for example. That's kind of the vision I think here. And I'm very in. Like for me, I've kind of made the joke. He's like a blend of Jose Calderon and TJ Ford when they were both on the Raptors back in the Chris Bosh days.
Yeah.
Just like the cerebral ball security, 3-point shooting of Calderon and the quick twitch athleticism of TJ Ford. Another guy who comes to mind for me, and this is not a perfect comp, I'm still workshopping it a little bit. He kind of has like Mike Conley vibes to me, where like maybe he's never an all-star point guard. Maybe he's never like the best, one of the best 5 guards in the NBA, but like you're just always happy when he's running the show for you. You're always content to know you're going to get good looks. The ball is going to be taken care of. He's going to hit threes. He's going to have nights where he can carry you with scoring, but it's not going to be the big sort of core component of his game. And yeah, that's kind of what I've been liking about Quickley here. Again, the defense has to improve. He's been really cold from 3 so far. He went 1 of 9 against the Magic last week, 1 of 5 against the Bucks on Monday night. That's going to come around, though. He's too good a shooter for it not to. But yeah, the playmaking stuff has been awesome. And I really think that needs to be sort of the tunnel he's going down as a developmental track is he is like the lead guard, the lead point guard of this team. He just does point guard stuff, and all the scoring stuff on top is just kind of gravy when it comes to sort of the package he provides you.
Yeah, I love that comparison. Just like when I think of Mike Conley, I think of like outside of being a little small, just takes nothing off the table. And that's kind of how I think about Immanuel Quickley, just can fill like essentially whatever gap you need. And I was thinking back, and it was Alec Burks at the end of the 22-23 season who was inexplicably starting at point guard over Immanuel Quickley after Knicks cut Kemba Walker. That was, if any Knicks fans want to criticize Tom Thibodeau for anything going on now, just remember it could be substantially worse. OG Anunoby, he got off to just an incredible start this season. His first 17 games, 19 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, shooting 52% from the field, 42% from three, 83% from the foul line. Like somehow, like maybe even better defense than he played a year ago. And now his last 20 games, just 14 points per game, 43% from the field. And that is mostly because he is shooting just 28% from three. And I wanted to know if this was like kind of a norm for him to have really hot stretches and really cold stretches, because I know there was always like, and it's something you described to me initially when we did the first crossover after the trade, but like always like an urgency for him to be something more and be a little bit more of an on-ball guy. And it wasn't that at the beginning of the season, but there were flashes, like his ability to get to his mid-range game and use his elbow to just, and like strength to create room and like get shots up. Felt like, this is sacrilegious on a Raptors podcast, but I'll say it anyways. Felt like extraordinarily poor man's Kawhi Leonard at point.
And the Kawhi Leonard thing. Oh no,
sorry,
the Raptors fans talked themselves into circles over that one for years.
Sorry. Yeah, before I said, I tried to cage it a little bit. But anyways, like just and outside of that, like just relentless, like bully ball, like whenever he got a guard on him, just pinning them and getting dunk after dunk, hitting, basically it felt like every three he took was going in. And not only has the shooting dissipated, but it feels like, with the exception of that last Raptors game where you guys saw it, he was a monster. Like him, like being I think through that stretch, he was top 10 in the NBA in dunks, and that's gone away a little bit. And it just feels like there are these stretches where he's not hurt, but he doesn't look as confident, like rising up in traffic and jamming on someone and leveraging that incredible athleticism he has. So I don't know if that was a coherent question, but maybe you've experienced what I'm experiencing now with him.
Yeah, I mean, there were times where the offense was a little more janky than others, I think. Yeah. And, I think anytime he was asked to sort of do, a little too much, it never was all that exciting. Like, there were a lot of fans who were like, oh, the Kawhi Leonard thing, he's Kawhi Leonard. And I just I never subscribed to that. I always, my sort of party line with him was just let OG be OG. OG is a monster defender. He's one of the best defenders alive. He's one of the best guys at defending all of the best players in the world. He's going to hit 38 to 40% of his threes, and he's going to be a pretty damn efficient 2-point scorer on really easy looks, and he's going to finish the buckets he should finish. When he starts to expand beyond that, it's a little bit, it can get a little bit dicey. And look, he's probably refined things, I think, over the years and gotten a little better. I mean, that game against the Raptors was pretty masterful. It was awesome to see, frankly, on the other side. As much as it hurt to watch the Raptors get punked like that, it was also like, oh boy, he's out here, doing the thing.
I felt the same way about RJ the first game.
Yeah. So as far as 3-point shooting, there would be times where it goes up and down a little bit here and there, but for the most part, he's like pretty much one of the more reliable, dependable 38% guys there is. I imagine there's some look. The Knicks are really good, and the amount I've watched them, I've probably watched like 10 Knicks games this year, something like that. When I do watch them, there is just like a lot of mouths to feed in that starting five, right? And so someone is gonna kind of be on the outside looking in. As Mikal Bridges has kind of figured out whatever the hell was going on early in the year, I'm sure that's taking away some from OG. And I think Bridges, as much as I totally will forever maintain OG is a better overall player than Mikal Bridges, I think Bridges probably a little bit more smooth when it comes to creating his own offense, and that's fine. OG makes it back by being a more monstrous defender, and that's just the way it is. But yeah, I wouldn't be too concerned. The fact that he's played 37 games is awesome. You knock on wood that everything's going to stay all right. But, this is a pretty long stretch for him to go without getting hurt. You hope that playing nearly 37 minutes a game is not going to, cause any sort of wear down. I know that's like a constant worry with Tibbs people and people who watch Tibbs teams. But yeah, I think what OG's doing, the 3-point shooting will come back. I don't think you should expect a whole lot in terms of expanding the offensive package. You don't need it, right? Karl-Anthony Towns is out there playing all first team all NBA level basketball almost. And Jalen Brunson's Jalen Brunson. Bridges is doing his thing. I think the Knicks are just fine, and OG is just fine within that. The 16-5-2 he's putting up this year is basically exactly in line with what you'd expect from him. And I don't think, any one way or another, when it gets down to it, when you get to the playoffs, you're going to be really happy OG Anunoby is on your basketball team, I guess is the finer point to put on all of this.
Yeah, I mean, his net rating, I think, what was it, through the first 50 games on the Knicks was, I think, literally the highest of anyone in an initial 50-game stretch with the team ever. And sometimes you look at that and you're like, all right, but it's not him. It's the piece around him with OG. Like, it is OG. He's been truly transformative for this team. And I kind of think sometimes he could just use a week off. Because to your point, he's never played this much, this consistently in his entire career. So, and playing hard minutes with hard assignments every night, having to cover 2 or 3 guys at times. You got to cover for Jalen Brunson. You got to cover for Karl-Anthony Towns, and he allows those guys to be great with what he does defensively. So I could say no buyer's remorse on OG Anunoby whatsoever. He's extraordinary, and hopefully the shot comes around. But next on Locked On Knicks and Locked On Raptors, we're going to get into the actual game, what we think the Raptors' formula is for potentially beating the Knicks, and how the Knicks are going to have to cover up in transition, because that was a way Toronto really got at them the first 2 games. That next on Locked On Knicks and Locked On Raptors.
Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time, the single best place to buy tickets for the sporting events that you want to go to, not just sports as well. You got concerts, theater, comedy shows. It's all in there on their super easy to use app. I am a regular Game Time user. If ever I'm going to an event, I go to Game Time first. It's no joke. It's the best one. It's got super easy layout, very clean interface. You can tap through in 1 or 2 clicks and get your tickets for all kinds of events. I bought tickets over the holiday break for my in-laws to go to see the Toronto Raptors of the PWHL. Super affordable, really easy to get those tickets, and it was a nice little gift to give my in-laws who love going to sports games. It's a great thing. So go check it out. It's a wonderful thing. You got Game Time Picks, which filters out the fluff. It just shows you the best deals on the seats that you might want, and makes it so you don't have to filter through all the seats you don't want to pay for. You just get those ones with the best prices. They have all kinds of wonderful features, seat views, the all-in pricing thing you can toggle right on. It's great. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Well, it's game time, of course.
All right, what's up, guys? It is the crossover event of the Locked On Century, Locked On Raptors, Locked On Knicks getting back together. Sean, you mentioned it. Really competitive game the first time the two teams met, and the Knicks did not have much of an answer for RJ Barrett. Second game around, I think, was one of the better games the Knicks have played all season, and a lot of it was on the shoulders of OG just being an absolute monster. But what have you seen early as Toronto? I saw in your episode description the BBQ trio, like trying to incorporate them back together, and like what are kind of the growing pains of making it all work with all 3 of them back, and how do you think they could be utilized tonight against the Knicks?
Yeah, look, it's been kind of a weird go. Quickley and Barnes, I think in their first game back, the connection was pretty instant. And I do think at some point they're going to figure out the chemistry here. I think their first game back, the game they played on Monday against the Bucks was literally the first time they've had their healthy roster and the BBQ trio since March the 1st. It's been a long time. And so it's going to take a little while for them to kind of iron out the kinks on offense. I am not worried about the offense at all. I think those guys, the skills are too complementary for it to not work. And it worked really well last year. It was the second most used lineup the Raptors had last season was the starters they had with Quickley, Gary Trent Jr., who's now Grady Dick in that spot. And then RJ Barrett, Scotty Barnes, Jakob Poeltl. That group scored a ton. They were like a plus 11.8 net rating with like 122 offensive rating. They were really good. They were awful in the game against the Bucks. They started off well. They won their minutes in the first half and then completely cratered in the second half. The defense is the thing that's really the concern there. We talked about the wing stuff with Grady Dick and RJ Barrett. That's going to be the weak point. But offensively, I do think they got a bit of a raw deal having to play the Bucks in their first game because the Bucks defense is basically designed to stop the Raptors doing what they like to do, which is score at the rim. The Raptors are number 2 in rim frequency in the NBA. They get to the rim a ton. Their entire offense is about moving guys towards the rim with cuts, with drives, with all of it. And they just, the Bucks are a team that has kind of always had a lot of, at least this season where this has been the identity. The Bucks have totally destroyed them in both games they played. It's just not a good matchup for them. The Knicks, however, not a great rim protection team. And so I think that's why they really had a puncher's chance in that game back on December 9th. The Raptors were kind of in their flow. They were doing their thing. And They just were able to kind of get to the spots on the floor that they want to score. The thing about the Raptors is like they create really good shots. Right now, they have the number 1 location effective field goal percentage in basketball per clean the glass. And for those who don't know, that's essentially shot quality. It's what would this team shoot if they had average players shooting these shots. And they are number 1. They get shots where you want them at the rim. They're 9th in corner 3 frequency. They get to the short mid-range a lot, and they're really effective from there. You'll see Scotty Barnes has this sort of burgeoning mid-range package that's been really coming into form over the last few weeks. They get shots that are good and, that most teams should strive for. It's just the talent has not been there to connect on them. And I think now that they've got the starting 5 back and there's the fit of those guys is so seamless in theory, I think we're going to start to see the actual proper effective field goal percentage, which is 23rd in the NBA right now, start to tick up more in line with the quality of the looks they create within their offense. And so, the Knicks, I think, are a pretty interesting matchup for them for this reason. Obviously, OG on Scotty is a super fun sort of tete-a-tete, but I do think with Quickley and Pirtle and Barrett and Grady Dick flying around, like there are ways they can kind of sort of pick at the spots in the Knicks defense that are maybe a little bit less stout than OG. And I do think if the Raptors stand a chance of kind of getting back in sort of into a groove here, the Knicks are a team, while they're better and will probably win, are a team that might be able to kind of let them sort of iron out the kinks of their offense and sort of tie things together and sort of, the way their offense works, it's very much like a machine, right? It's a lot of like dribble handoff stuff, first action, second action, third action. They haven't quite connected those actions just yet. It's a lot of just like one thing and see what that yields. And if it doesn't yield anything, mid-range jumper, and they're kind of out. I think as they kind of get back in tune with playing with one another, and the Knicks could be a team where this is capable, where they're capable of doing this, the offense is going to start to run around into form. The defense, it could be a high-scoring game, very likely, because the Raptors sure love to give up a big point totals, at least lately. They've been pretty bad of late, and the Knicks are a really terrifying offense that will probably take advantage of that quite a bit.
Yeah, well, maybe. It did not look good the other night against the Orlando Magic. They've been the second worst three-point shooting team in basketball over the last 8 games. Jalen Brunson, you probably could not guess how low the number is over his last 8. I think he's shooting 13% from 3. Mikal Bridges, since erupting against the Spurs, and everyone who defended him took a big victory lap on that, and they said, all right, let's go. It's all resolved. I think he had the highest effective field goal percentage in the NBA in December. And since then, it's not been good. He's 25% from 3, or at least from distance, 25% from 3 the last 8 games. I already mentioned OG. He's been in a prolonged cold stretch. And the one guy who has never faltered offensively for them, Karl-Anthony Towns, is very much questionable for this game with knee soreness. And I think he could honestly like flip the Knicks rim protection in a positive way if he plays after a hard start. He's been much better defensively, and I think the Thunder game was the peak of that, where I would call him, for the most part, maybe until the fourth quarter, like a legitimate positive against the best team the Knicks. I mean, they're just the best team in basketball this year, and something that was underappreciated even when the rim protection was terrible, that rebounding is a big part of defense, right? You don't let the other team get up a second shot. That is a great defensive play, and Karl-Anthony Towns is the best rebounder in the NBA. Jericho Sims statistically has been a fantastic rim protector. I think, in fact, at least before the last 10 games, the best in all of basketball. He was kind of middling last night. So we'll see what he has. And he is absolutely a non-threat on offense. Like, just gets the ball around the rim. And if he's not flying to catch a lob, even 3 years into his career, 26 years old, has no idea what to do. So I think there are avenues for Toronto to pull off the upset if Karl-Anthony Towns doesn't play. I do think we see a motivated, pissed off Knicks team. That was embarrassing what happened to them against the Magic.
Yeah, I mean, the Raptors have embarrassed themselves the last couple times out. Magic game for them, one of them. I mean, the Magic, just those guys, real annoying.
Yeah.
And then they really kind of laid an egg against the Bucks, and like everyone was really excited. The first game back, they're healthy. The first time the team's been healthy all season, and then they just completely get waxed. So hopefully they have a little bit more spirit and pride, et cetera, for this one against the Knicks. I'm looking forward to it. I like watching the Knicks play a lot. They're super fun. I'm a Karl-Anthony Towns sicko. I love OG. So I hopefully Towns is playing and it's a good one. But yeah, I mean, I would expect the Knicks to win this basketball game. The Raptors are pretty bad. They're 8-28. They've won 1 game since December the 3rd. It's not stacking towards the Raptors picking up a dub here on the road, but like I said, like we've talked about, the matchup here is maybe more favorable for the Raptors than some of the other real heavies of the NBA.
All right, so some potential for a new low for the Knicks, maybe a win of the season for the Raptors. And I know it would warm the hearts of Immanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett after getting dealt away to pull off the upset. Because I don't think since the trade the Raptors have won. I think they've only played the 3 times, and I don't think Toronto's won any of them, unless I'm totally misremembering last year.
They've only won like 21 games since the trade. So unlikely that they've won any of the games against the Knicks.
Okay, that's a happy note to end on. He's Sean Woodley. I'm Gavin Schall. We'll talk to you very soon on both Locked On Knicks and Locked On Raptors.